Hello there and welcome to my chess channel. My name is Albert, and I'm not a GM or even a decent player. I've started to play chess about a year and a half ago, and after I reached my limit, I understood that I need to put in a lot of effort in order to continue growing as a player. So I started to solve puzzles, research stuff, work with engine, and then one day I decided to record all of this and upload it on YouTube, and maybe it'll be actually helpful for someone. So here I am, recording my first video ever, and in this video I'll tell you about Tennison Gambit trap, which is named after amateur chess player, Outrro Tennison, who lived and played chess in the 19th century. We start with knight to f3, black replies with d5. This opening is called ready opening. Then we give away pawn by moving it to e4. As you can see, valuation bar dropped to -1, as if asking, are you sure about that? Here I need to say that if you have never seen a trap before, chess traps are not super weapon that'll help you to win every game. No, in chess, a trap is a move which tempts your opponent to play a losing move. If your opponent is unprepared, you can win material or even give a quick checkmate, but if your opponent knows what he does, you'll end up in an unfavorable position. Basically, chess trap is a high risk to high reward gameplay. And the less rating your opponent has and the less there's time on a clock, the more chances for success you will have. With that said, let's move on to the next move. If black takes pawn, we play knight to g5 attacking the pawn. And here, black has 4 options to defend the pawn: knight to f6, bishop to f5, queen to d5, pawn to f5. Let's check the first variation, knight to f6. In that case we play pawn to d3. Black usually decides to trade pawns, and we take black's pawn with bishop. Then black will probably try to force our knight to move away and play pawn to h6. This is a huge blunder, and it's actually the most popular move. We play knight to f7 forking the queen and the rook. Black has to capture knight with king, and then we play bishop to g6 check. King captures the bishop and we capture the queen. And that is the first variation. If you check that variation at Lichess database, you'll see that more than 40,000 players fell for this trap, even the guys with 2500 rating. The second variation is bishop to f5. In that case we play knight to c3, double attacking the pawn. Black may double defend the pawn by moving knight to f6, and then we triple attack the pawn by playing queen to e2. As you can see, the engine didn't like that move, so it's a risky move. Black may play queen to d4 to triple defend the pawn, and that is a blunder, and now we start our attack by bringing queen to b5, giving check and attacking bishop on f5, and pawn on b7. Black blocks check with bishop to d7, and we capture b7 pawn, attacking rook on a8. Black may try to save rook moving bishop to c6, but then we play bishop to b5, pinning the bishop. Black has to move queen to d7, and then we capture bishop on c6 with our bishop. If black moves queen to c6 to attack our queen and defend the rook, we surprise him with queen to c8 checkmate. And that is the second variation. The third variation is queen to d5, to defend the pawn and attack the knight. In that case we play pawn to d3, double attacking the pawn and defending the knight. If black brings bishop to f5 or knight to f6 to double defend the pawn, for example, the knight, we play knight to c3, attacking both queen and pawn. There are a lot of options where black can actually move the queen: a5, e5, f5, d6, d7. If black plays queen to e5 or f5, we take pawn with our d-pawn. If black plays queen to a5, d6 or d7, we capture pawn with knight on g-file. Now let's go back to move 4. If black decides not to bring bishop or knight to double defend the pawn, but instead captures the pawn on d3, we capture it with bishop giving away g2 pawn. If black takes the bait and captures the pawn, and attacks the rook on h1, we play bishop to e4, and now queen is almost trapped. The only safe square for queen is g4, but if black moves it there, we capture it with our queen. Then black captures our queen with bishop and we play bishop to b7 taking the pawn and attacking the rook. Eventually we capture this rook. And that is the third variation. The fourth and the last variation is pawn to f5, and in that case we play bishop to c4, attacking f7 square and threatening to fork queen and rook. Black has to play knight to h6, to defend f7 square. Then we play pawn to d3. Black probably takes it with pawn, and then we castle. If black captures c2 pawn, then we capture it back with our queen. At this moment the trap is failed, but white is much better positioned despite being down 2 pawns. So, we've checked 4 variations of the Tennison Gambit trap, but a good chess player should not only know how to play traps but also how to avoid them. So let's look at Tennison Gambit from black's perspective. So, white plays knight to f3, we play pawn to d5, and if white plays pawn to e4, we can assume that white tries to lure us in a trap. We take the e-pawn, and if white plays knight to g5, we have 2 options. The first one is to play pawn to e5, attacking the knight and giving away the pawn on e5. The second option is to play knight to f6, to defend the pawn. Let's check the first option, pawn to e5. White usually takes pawn on e4, we play knight to c6. From now on, the trap is deactivated and we proceed with normal development. Now let's check the second option, which is knight to f6. This is inaccuracy and the first variation of trap, as you can remember, but if our opponent tries to set up a trap, we can actually use it against him. And if white plays pawn to d3, this is a mistake, which gives us positional advantage, and the best move is bishop to g4. I'll leave PGN files in the description so you can work with this material by yourself. So, this is the end of the lesson, hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. I also have other playlists on my channel, where I study different openings and review awesome games of the past, so you can check it out as well. That's it for today and see you in the next video.